Okay, so this is I'm sure it's not a new method. It's kind of a new method to me, but this appears to be the types of responses that employers are looking for now. I've heard feedback from some students. I've heard feedback from some employers that they really like this method of answering questions during interviews. So what this is it's the STAR interview method, okay? It's just a structured way of responding to those kind of behavioral based questions. And you'll do that by discussing a specific situation, task, action, and the result, right? So spelling out the word STAR there. S for situation, T for task, A for action, R for result. So the situation is basically describing the situation that you were in. So you're going to be asked a question. They may say, tell us about a time when you struggled with something, or tell us about a time when you feel like you didn't meet expectations, right? So describe that situation, and then talk about the task that you had. What was the goal that you were working towards there? And then you're going to talk about the action. So describe the actions you took to address that situation, to address achieving that goal, of getting through that, of completing that task, right? So what specific steps did you take, and what was your particular contribution? So make it about you. You want to make this about you, okay? I would be careful not to describe what a group or a team of people did. Always use the word I, right? So use the word I when doing this, but not we. You still want to be honest, but you want to make this about you, right? And then finally, you just want to describe the result. What was the outcome of the actions, okay? Do not be, like I said, you want to make this about you, so you don't want to be shy about taking credit for the steps that you took to complete the task, right? So make sure you give yourself credit for that, okay? When you're doing this, you want to be as specific as possible, right? But you don't want to ramble or include too much information. Many of you would say, I ramble too much when I'm doing these presentations for you guys. Let's try not to do that when you're in the interview. You're typically going to have very limited time in an interview. Unfortunately for you guys, I can ramble on as long as I want in these lectures online. So you also really want to try and eliminate any examples that maybe don't make you look so great, right? That don't paint you in a positive light. However, it is okay to give them an example that ended in a negative result, because it really can kind of highlight the fact that you have strengths in facing adversity, you have strengths in addressing mistakes or issues, things like that, right? So let's talk really quickly. Let's just go through a sample response using STAR, okay? So let's say the interviewer says, hey, tell me about a time when you had to work under pressure. How did you handle that particular challenge? Let's say you were somebody that worked for a landscaping business. You could say, okay, well, here's the situation. Well, revenues were declining for the landscaping company I worked for, and we had several long-term clients that weren't renewing their contracts. We weren't really sure why. And then you would move on to the task. What was the task? What was the goal, right? So my goal was to generate new ideas, materials that could help us with retention of current customers and the addition of new and past customers. So we wanted to get some of those customers that had left us for whatever reason. We were going to try and get them back as well. What was the action you took? Well, the action, I designed a new flyer that included coupons and updated rates that we could both mail out and place on doors while we were in the neighborhoods. When we were mowing in neighborhoods, we could place them on the doors. We could send them to the post office to have sent out as a mailer. I also occasionally used a phone list to make cold calls to former customers, and I would inform them about new rates as well as any discounts that we offered for, hey, if you pay for 3 months of lawn services in advance, you can get this discount or you can get that discount. And that would be the action that I took. And then result. What was the result? What happened because of those actions? Did I complete that task? Well, by the end of the summer, we had signed 20 new accounts and we had retained 95% of our current accounts, as well as welcoming back 7 former customers that had previously left us to try out a new landscaper. So that's kind of the STAR method right there, right? Give them the situation. Tell them what your task or your goal was. What was the action you took to accomplish that goal? And what was the result of the action? Okay, you're basically just telling a story. Okay, and this I have seen like I said, I've gotten a lot of feedback that this is kind of the approach that interviewers and employers are liking right now. This is what they want to see. They want to see you kind of use this STAR approach. So give them the situation, tell them the task or the goal, what action did you take to accomplish that, and what was the result of that action. Okay. So if you have any questions about this STAR method, just feel free to contact me, and we can go over it in a little more detail if you'd like. So some of you may interview and you may not get a second interview. That's okay. It happens. Don't fret. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to get more interviews. Okay. So why did you maybe not get a second interview? As we mentioned before, sometimes it's because somebody followed up with a thank you note and you didn't, right? I think I mentioned before that my wife interviews people at her place of employment, and she has told me that occasionally they'll run into a situation where they liked both candidates that were interviewing for the position, but only one of them ever got back with them with any form of email saying thank you or anything like that. And for them, that was the person that they hired. Let's say they were both equally qualified and they liked them both equally well, but the other one went that one step extra, right, to show that they were really interested in getting the job. So be sure that you're sending those follow-ups, those thank you notes, those thank you emails, right? Not having the technical knowledge, that's what the second one is basically saying. You're unable to engage in the informational conversation. You guys won't have to worry about that. They're not going to ask you a ton of technical questions right off the bat. Now, you may get 2 or 3 interviews deep and they start asking you a few more technical questions, but they're only going to ask you things that they would expect you to know at this point in your career. You're more interested in salary than the job itself. Don't be that guy. They're going to tell you how much they're going to pay you, and usually there's some wiggle room. There's room for negotiation, but let that be after you've had a few interviews and you're more comfortable with them. Don't ask them right up front, right from the very beginning. Especially interns, you're probably not going to be able to negotiate an intern salary. They're just going to tell you, hey, we're paying you $20 an hour, or $21 an hour. Come in and work busy season during tax season. Okay. Don't ask them questions about things that you could easily research yourself, right? This is one of the rules in my syllabus too, and there's a reason for this. It's because you could have easily answered that without having to ask, right? You didn't need to ask me how to schedule an appointment. It's all there in the syllabus. You didn't need to ask them what year they were founded. It's right there on their website, right? You didn't need to ask their partner's name. It's all right there on the website, okay? This one, you did not have all the accomplishments listed on your resume. You're going to get to the point in your career where you're just not going to have accomplishments listed anymore. But at that point, your resume and your experience are going to speak for themselves, because like we said, a resume really is just a what can I do for you, right? So that one I'm not too big on, although occasionally if they have lots and lots of really qualified candidates, it may come down to something like that. You avoided eye contact, you chewed gum, you had bad breath. I mean, it sounds goofy, but those are all things that, these interviewers, these employers, they're human as well, right? So if you can't make eye contact with them, if you're sitting there chomping on gum, if you're breathing right in their face and you got stank breath, these are all things they're going to take into consideration and think about after they interview you. This next one, I already told you guys, leave your cell phones in your car. Please just leave your cell phones in your car. I know they are a part of your bodies now. I'm just as guilty, right? But please leave your cell phone in your car. You're just going to avoid so many potential hazards if you just leave it in your vehicle. Don't complain about your current employer, right? They may try to get you to do so, but just don't do it. Avoid that at all costs, right? Because if you're complaining about your current employer, you're going to complain about them when you work there. So don't have anything negative to say about current or past employers. Just keep everything positive. And then finally, this last one is kind of the brutal, honest truth. I see this happening less and less now as the demand is increasing for accounting students. But back when I was a student, not everybody got internships. Not everybody got job offers. I will say that with my experience over the last year teaching this class, nearly everybody that wanted one got one. And that's just the model now. There's a high demand for accounting students, higher than it's ever been. and there's not enough accounting students to go around. So, but in the past, it was typically because you weren't the best qualified. Your GPA wasn't as high as somebody else's. Your work experience was not as impressive as somebody else's. I'm seeing that less and less now. I think eventually in the next year or two, it's going to go back to a more competitive model. But right now, it's not nearly as competitive as it used to be. So after the interview, you want to, we talked about this just a minute ago, you want to jot down any names and titles. You want to take some notes on questions and answers that you gave. You want to send a thank you letter. You want to send a follow-up letter, right? Those are just other ways to get your name in front of that employer again. It's another way for them to remember you. Remember, you are trying to put your best foot forward. You are selling your skills and your talents and your education. You are selling yourself to that employer. So any chance you get to get your name in front of them is a good thing. If you are going to decline a job offer, which several of you will, it just happens, you find another internship or another job that suits you better, do it tactfully, give them a reason. They like feedback as well. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take this job because, I thought I got an opportunity to go and do an audit internship somewhere, and that's what I really wanted to do. Or I really wanted to do a risk assurance internship somewhere. So, if you do accept a position, and I've seen this happen in the past, and it is not good. This really does. It's going to make it difficult for you in the future if you accept a position and then reject it after you've already accepted the position. So if you take a position, just keep that position, and just know you're going to have to try next cycle to get the other one that you were offered. Outside of employers, you do want to send thank you letters to anyone that's helped you land the job. So anybody that gave you a reference, anything like that, thank them because they went out of their way. I don't give references lightly. I will tell you that. Typically, especially for students, you're going to have to be a Beta Alpha Psi student, and you're going to have to show me that you've worked really hard in order for me to provide a letter of recommendation, or to call one of my buddies that works in a CPA firm and say, hey, this student's going to interview today. I know they're a good interviewer. So, or I know they're a good candidate for you guys. And most professionals I know are pretty stingy with their recommendations. So if somebody does provide a recommendation for you, if they help you get that job, if they help you get your foot in the door, then you need to thank them appropriately as well. Be able to handle rejection positively, but be realistic, right? This is something I tried to prepare you guys for with the resumes. I told you resumes are very, very personal documents, right? They are you on a piece of paper. And so you tend to take it personally if somebody says something negative about your resume or they provide some kind of feedback that you don't agree with on your resume. You tend to take it a little bit personally. And that's something in the professional world you're just going to have to learn to adjust to and learn to get over. I have received plenty of critique. And believe me, you guys don't have 400 people critiquing you, every 16 weeks. So I have learned to take critique and not take it personally. You have to. And you will learn that as well as you go through your professional career, that it is okay for somebody to say, hey, you know what, you can improve in this area. I didn't like the way you did that. You can improve it by doing this, right? So handle the rejections positively, but you need to be realistic about it, right? You will get feedback occasionally that you're like, well, I can't do anything about the fact that I'm right-handed. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. So you do need to be realistic about it, but you also need to learn how to take it positively and take it in stride and learn from that critique and that rejection.